coming up on the 4-year anniversary of the publication of Man Alive. Which is a signal event for me. It matters more to me than it does to anybody else, but it matters a great deal to me. But it makes me think I should be talking about matters of great moment at the Church of Splendor, because this, after all, is the world's only atheist, egoist, anarchist church. And yet I find myself deeply dismayed about the things of great moment that I might talk about. I've talked entirely too much about Donald Trump, and I don't really feel like wallowing anymore in that mire. The rest of the election season is equally depressing. We are, among the Democrats, we are offered a choice between a fool and a felon, and so on the Republican side, Donald Trump pops out of his jack-in-the-box to say, why not both? I'm spending entirely too much time looking at people, which is educational for me. It's truly beneficial for me, and at the same time very, very depressing. I find it harder and harder to figure out among men who is an actual homosexual and who is just desperately pretending to be a homosexual as a sort of camouflage in the social justice warrior world. And of course, to look at women is to see either egregiously underdressed sluts or giant barrels of flesh. Women are turning into giant barrels of flesh. There was exciting news this week. The number of overweight people now exceeds the number of underweight people on the earth. On Earth, there are more overfed people than there are underfed people. Most of those overfed people are in the United States, of course. Most of the remainder are in the Western world, generally Western Europe, or the parts of Southeast Asia that have been most heavily influenced by Greek civilization. This is a great triumph for capitalism. Really, honestly, it is. It's a real triumph for freedom and free market economics, but it's also really kind of sad that the thing that the Greeks were most adamant in warning us about, the slavery to the appetites, is what has become of Western civilization, is one enslavement to appetites after another. This is really not too terribly exciting for me to talk about either. And there are any number of other topics that are equally dismaying, equally depressing, equally despair-inducing for me. And I'm not a man of despair. It's not where I live. It's not how I live. It's not what I live for. Rule number 6, keep your own counsel. Rule number 7, look out for your own. A big part of what I try to do at the Church of Splendor, a big part of, the motivation for Man Alive was instructing you in the art of mental self-defense, how to defend your mind against the onslaughts of especially anti-egoistic ideas, but anti-humanistic ideas of every sort, including the egregious indulgence of appetites, whether they are sexual display appetites or actual voraciousness, literal voraciousness, the inability to be satisfied by the amount of food that you consume, to consume ever and ever greater quantities of food until you become a giant barrel of flesh. So I figured we'd talk about cosmology instead. What could be bigger than talking about everything that exists? biggest ideas of all, cosmology, the nature of the cosmos. How the universe came into existence, how its existence proceeds through time, how it will vanish from existence if it ever does. These are giant, enormous, outrageously huge ideas, and there is no shortage of opinions on this subject and almost no facts. Almost none. I am an atheist. I do not believe in God. I do not believe in any God, any gods. I do not believe in supernatural phenomenon of any sort. I don't believe in an afterlife. I certainly don't believe in the sort of karmic vengeance that allegedly modern civilized people want to avail themselves of in order to insist that they're modern and civilized and a-religious. I don't believe in anything at all like that. I believe in the natural world and the natural functioning of the natural world. I don't have any reason to believe that there is any cause for the existence of phenomena, all phenomena, including the cosmos as a whole. I don't believe there's any reason to suppose that there is any cause for these phenomena except natural causes, natural processes. And yet, I would argue that modern man, humanity as of April 3rd, 2016, our epistemological posture is much like kneeling at the front door of a giant mansion at sunset and peering into that home through the keyhole and describing what we see. And the descriptions can be interesting, they can be fascinating, they can be ontologically consonant in the sense that what we're describing is actually there and we're describing it in a reasonable, rational manner, and yet what we are actually able to see is almost nothing, and what is available to be seen is almost everything. The reporting that we would make in that posture, on our knees, peering through the keyhole at sunset, as fascinating as it might be, would be massively incomplete. Egregiously incomplete. Possibly catastrophically incomplete. And certainly subject to a practically infinite series of successive revisions in our claims as we acquire more information about what's actually inside that mansion, especially after we've actually managed to enter it. And I hasten to stress that this is not Plato's cave. I am not making an epistemological argument or an anti-epistemological argument. I am simply observing the obvious fact that what we know compared to what we may someday know is a truly minuscule quantity. We are amazing creatures, and the successes that we've had in terms of improving our knowledge have been remarkable, especially over the course of the last 5,000 years, especially over the course of the last 500 years, especially over the course of the last 50 years. The quantity of information that humanity possesses grows massively, not just exponentially, but logarithmically, and arguably this will proceed apace, assuming we don't destroy ourselves or eat ourselves to death or manage to kill ourselves with ever more virulent sexually transmitted diseases, assuming that our decadence does not destroy Western civilization, then our knowledge base should continue to grow logarithmically through time. But nevertheless, we live on a small planet in a minor solar system, in a backwater galaxy, in a vast plenum. And the amount of information that we've managed to collect so far is much alike to peering into a mansion through the keyhole at sunset. And our descriptions are fascinating, but they're massively incomplete. And if you want to insist that you have some overarching cosmological theory that explains all of existence in a way that is irrefutable, indisputable, not subject to further correction, improvement, revision. I don't believe you. I don't trust you. I don't really want much to do with you. I don't really care what the nature of your theory is, whether it's theistic or atheistic, whether it's based in divination or revelation or scientific cognition. I truly don't care, because I don't believe you have any basis for making the claim. I don't think that any cosmological theory is terribly useful at this point, and I really don't think they're all that interesting. Everybody's day job is boring after about 90 seconds at a cocktail party. Oh, what do you do? Hey, that's fascinating. After 90 seconds, that's what you say is, hey, that's fascinating, which means I've heard enough. And then you turn to somebody else and say, so, what do you do for a living? Hey, that's fascinating. And cosmological theories, whatever the theories are, whatever origin, whatever basis they have in argument and evidence, this is all somebody's day job. And that day job will be fascinating to that person and to the people he does it with, and it will be boring to everyone else. And the claims that the person will make about his cosmological theory will be all but entirely unsupported by evidence, because we have almost no evidence to draw upon. So this all comes up in my thinking because Kathleen, my lovely wife Kathleen, is reading a book by people who want to defend the idea of God by using modern scientific arguments to argue for the existence of an engineer. The term engineer is mine. It's not a term that they use. It's a term that I've been using for the past 30 years or so. The idea of the engineer, for me, is the plausible possibility that the cosmos as we know it, the universe as we know it, is a made thing. And if you want to insist that the universe is not a made thing, again, I'm going to dismiss your claim as lacking in evidence. It is entirely plausible to me that the cosmos could be a made thing, not a creation of God imagined up in 7 days for the sole purpose of tormenting Adam and Eve and their unlucky offspring, but a made thing in much the same way that the house I'm living in is a made thing, the guitar I'm playing is a made thing. That is it impossible that the universe could be an artifact of someone else's creativity? No, I can't make that claim. I can't make the claim that that's impossible because I can't make any alternative claim. My belief is that the cause of all observed phenomena are natural, other than the things that are man-made. And of course, man is natural in origin also, so you could say that man-made things are secondary consequences of the things that are natural in origin. I believe that the cosmos is natural in origin. I believe that causality is a naturally occurring phenomenon, that it's not a made thing, that the universe is not a made thing, but I'm not willing to insist that it could not possibly be a made thing. And that's the argument that the book Kathleen is reading is making, a further argument that the universe is a made thing. There's no supportable basis for making that claim, just as there's no supportable basis for making the alternative claim. To insist that it's impossible that the universe is a made thing is not plausible to me, is not tenable to me on the basis of the evidence that's available to us now. And to insist that the universe is or must be a made thing is also not plausible or tenable, because there is no evidence to support that claim. But what I find interesting about this, it's always been interesting to me. The reason that I came up with the idea of the argument for the engineer in the first place is in order to say, so what? Big fucking deal. What difference does it make to you? To you? People who have been defrauded of their money by the modern education system will insist, we now know this, we now know that. Science has proved that this, science has proved that that. It is beyond argument that this The science is settled. The science is settled means shut up or I'll throw you in jail. That's what it meant when the Pope said it to Galileo, and that's what it means now. But theologians, of course, do the same thing. It was a theologian doing it to Galileo. He wasn't saying the science is settled. He was saying the theology is settled. And Galileo was saying, but wait, I have evidence that argues that your theology is not quite so settled. None of these questions are settled, and I won't say that it's not possible for these questions to be settled someday by someone, but that someday is far off in the future, and that someone is probably a good deal different from me, from you, from the people that we know. You could argue that I am not technically an atheist, but rather an agnostic. Agnostic means don't know. That's what it means, don't know. I don't love the term agnostic because too many agnostics insist that agnostic means can't know. And I don't believe that anything that can be known or that anything that exists cannot be discovered, cannot be uncovered, cannot be understood more fully. I don't like the idea of can't know. I don't care for it as an epistemological proposition, but I really don't care for it as a moral proposition. It just seems squishy and gutless to me. And therefore I insist that I'm an atheist, even though I'm not willing to go where most atheists go and insist that there cannot possibly be an engineer of any sort, any imaginable sort. There cannot possibly be a creator of the universe. The universe cannot possibly be a made thing. I'm not willing to insist on that because I don't have any evidence for making that claim. Ronald Reagan said, with regard to the Soviet Union, trust but verify. And a corollary that you could draw from that admonition, trust but verify, is that anything that you cannot verify should not be trusted. And I think that this is very useful epistemologically. I think skepticism is a very useful epistemological tool. I don't mean, again, philosophical skepticism, the disbelief in the existence of anything, but rather epistemological skepticism, the unwillingness to conclude that something is so in the absence of overwhelming evidence that it must be so. If you have any reason to hold out a doubt, you should hold it out until you must make a choice. I don't decide anything until I have to decide. Drives my wife crazy. Drives everyone crazy. And anything that is of no particular moment to me, I'm willing to entertain it as a source of entertainment. But if it really doesn't matter to me, I truly don't care. Who cares whether the universe is a made thing or not? It really makes no difference. To you, to me, in my own life, it makes no difference whatever. And what does matter is that I am a creature of free will. I control my life exclusively. If there is an engineer, he does not care what I do or don't do. He certainly doesn't monitor my behavior like an East German spy. He has no intention of involving himself in my life for good or for ill. He doesn't intend to punish me for engaging in sin. If there is an engineer, he is as indifferent to me as a 9-year-old is indifferent to the ant farm that his grandma got him last Christmas. Even more indifferent than that, less interested. Where the 9-year-old might occasionally feed the ants. If there is a engineer who made the universe, he set it up and started it spinning and moved on to the next project. It has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with the everyday execution of my life. And what really does matter in the everyday execution of my life is that my universe, the universe of my experience, emerges from the inside out. Egoism emerges from the inside out. I think that casual interest in cosmology is, in fact, an active indifference to one's own life, a suppression of the will, an excuse-making mechanism that people latch onto in order to absolve themselves of their failures to do what they could and should be doing with their lives. And so from my point of view, cosmology writ large, the existence of the universe, the nature of existence and causality, the vast galaxies and the galaxy groups and the groups and groups of galaxies and black holes and quasars and neutron stars and all of the vast quantities of garbage that seem to infest the universe, enormous quantities of nuclear waste, widely dispersed, separated from each other by infinite quantities of nothing. None of this matters whatever. It doesn't matter at all. It's great that it's here because I'm here because of it. I'm grateful that there is a universe, and I'm grateful that it exists however it exists, and I'm grateful that it came into existence however it came into existence, and I'm grateful that if it ever does go out of existence, that won't happen anytime soon. I'm grateful for all these things, but I'm grateful because my interests matter to me. The universe only matters to me because I'm in it. And the things that I'm doing with my life are everything to me. The universe of my experience emerges from the inside out. And what matters to me in that universe is what I'm doing with my one, unique, irreplaceable life. In 1988, I wrote a book called Johnny with a Point. And in it, I proposed what I call the armpit of God theory. And I haven't read that lately, but what it amounts to is this. Suppose that everything that you think of as the universe, what we say is everything that exists is the universe, one turning. Suppose that that entire thing, the universe, is really nothing more than a speck of dust that's trapped in a bead of sweat clinging to the end of a stray hair in the armpit of God. And therefore you are a tiny little mote of anti-entropy within that tiny little speck of dust, within that tiny little drop of sweat on that tiny little hair in the armpit of God. That's what you are. And this is what you'll see when people talk about how small everything is, how small I feel. When I look upon the stars, I feel so small. When I look upon the stars, I feel like a giant. When I look at anything, I feel like a giant because I am a giant. I'm the biggest thing there is in the universe. I'm the most important thing there is in the universe. I'm the most consequential thing there is in the universe. And in certain respects, I'm the only thing that matters in the universe. Because the universe is not everything that exists. The universe is everything that exists to me, for me, in me, because of me. Consequent upon what I do about it. The universe is me, and the rest of it is just there. It's not about what you don't know, it's about what you do know. It's not about what you can't discover, it's about what you have discovered. It's not about what you can't do, what you won't do. It's about what you can do and what you have done, what you will do. Everything that matters in the universe is inside you. And your job is to bring it out. And if that's not a big enough idea for church, then you're too big for the Church of Splendor. My name is Greg Swan. I'll talk to you again next week.